Hi, this is Sharna Johnson, and I'm going to do a presentation on the Woodcock-Johnson 4. This is the test of achievement. That's the one that I'm going to be covering in this presentation, mostly covering the standard battery. Now, what is the Woodcock-Johnson test? There's actually three of them, three different kinds of assessment. There's the Woodcock-Johnson, the cognitive abilities, there's the test of oral language, and the one that I will be covering in this presentation is the test of achievement. The Woodcock-Johnson has been around for a while. It was developed in 1977, and it has been revised over the years, so now we're on the latest version of 4. It was version 4 was published in 2014. The original developers were Richard Woodcock and Mary E. Bonner Johnson, and it is available in both English and Spanish. Now, there is actually quite a bit to the Woodcock-Johnson test of achievement. I will be covering the test of achievement, the standard battery. We will just very briefly touch over the extended batteries that are also offered. The test, what does it do? It actually measures the student's academic strengths and weaknesses. It gives you a suggested starting point on where to begin in the test based on the student's age and grade. And the results can help explain a lot of things. It can help explain an area of weakness that can actually affect another academic area. And one thing, for example, if a student has a weakness in spelling, he or she, they might struggle at written assignments. So it helps identify students' strengths, where they're really good at academically. It helps them identify the weaknesses that they have and what kind of accommodations can help them make up for that weakness in that particular academic area. Now, we're going to cover the standard battery of tests. Subtests 1 through 11 are considered the standard battery, and here I have a list down here. I have been privileged to be able to administer some Woodcock-Johnson tests this school year so far, and I have administered tests 1 through 7. The tests 8, 9, 10, 11 are a little bit more not on my territory just yet. So it was really fun to do this presentation to kind of explore those areas as well. Now, the extended battery of tests, they're 12 through 20. Here's a list of them right here, and you can see it even actually covers areas like science and social studies and humanities. So who can take the Woodcock-Johnson 4? Well, when I did a search on the internet, it actually suggested that kids ages 2 all the way up to 90 could take it. However, when I look at the subtests, it looks like the appropriate age that they're suggesting would be ages 5 to 19 years old. The approximate test length, it depends on the student's ability. They suggest that 40 minutes for the core set of tests, the standard battery tests 1 through 6. Test 6 does require about 15 to 20 minutes. And then tests 1 through 5, that's 5 to 10 depending on the individual. I'm sure as some of us teachers know that some kids test well, a bit better than others. And others just need a little bit more time, maybe a few more breaks, a little bit more time to process. So, it really depends on the test length, depending on the student. And then some of the tests, they are timed, such as the reading fluency, the math facts, and the sentence writing fluency, and the word reading fluency. Those particular tests, as we'll talk about, they are timed. And how is it administered? It's actually administered through a 3-ring binder easel format. The directions are given on one side, and then the student is able to see pictures or words on the other side. I just wanted to show you a picture of an easel. This is the easel that I use when I am administering Woodcock-Johnson tests. Once you set it up, you can see where the plus sign, the red plus sign, would be where the student would read the information or say what the answer is, where the person administering the test would be on the other side of the easel. Now, the appropriate population for taking the test, the Woodcock-Johnson offers a whole bunch of accommodations that I'll be covering here in a little bit. So there's not a large population of people who can't take the Woodcock-Johnson. It is offered in English and Spanish, and even those who have hearing impairments can take it. Those who are visually impaired can take it. They don't suggest people who are blind should take the test. And then those who don't speak English as their main form of communication, don't speak English or Spanish, they shouldn't take that test. All right, and then accommodations, as I had mentioned, we can offer a lot of accommodations when administering the Woodcock-Johnson. So other than the time tests, there can be several breaks that are offered. Even English language learners can have some accommodations, although it is required that the test administrator, they're knowledgeable about some issues surrounding those who are ELL students. Just giving them some time to process the test, and then also those who administering the tests to have that knowledge in mind when assessing it and then interpreting the results. Any kind of test administrators working with students who have the attention or behavior difficulties, you should know how some techniques of even working with these students before you give out that test. Those who have hearing impairments, they can be administered the test through the mode of communication that they use. And then it is important, just like any of the results of the Woodcock-Johnson, but especially when you're working with individuals who do need the accommodation, such as hearing impairment students, that those tests you should be careful when you're interpreting those results. And then it's, as I mentioned before, recommended not to administer it to students who are legally blind, but those who are visually impaired, they can definitely take it. They can use items on the tests that help them see better, maybe a blown up copy of that. Make sure, of course, that they're using their glasses if they do have glasses. And then depending on the physical impairment for those students who are physically impaired, the test can be administered to those students as well. All right, so I'm going to be covering the standard battery of tests in this presentation. And test 1 is the word letter identification. So this test, it measures the student's word identification skills. So the younger individuals, for example, the 5- and 6-year-olds, they would start out with letter identification, and then it gets harder from there, being able to identify words. So the bezel is going to be 6 or lowest correct, and then the ceiling is going to be 6 highest correct. And the person giving the test can indicate the ease in which the individual could identify the words. That's a really neat portion of that, and it's actually on a lot of the tests too, where you're not only recording the 6 lowest correct or the 6 highest correct, but you're also being able to identify how the student was able to identify those answers. Was it easy? Was it hard? And I can actually show you in just a moment here what that kind of looks like. So with the correct responses, they receive a 1, and incorrect responses receive a 0. The total number of all the correct items are tallied, and then all the items below that bezel are recorded in the number correct box. All right, and this is a recording sheet here. In the center area, you're going to see where you can actually indicate the ease of which students were able to answer these questions. And like I said, they're on most of the standard battery of tests. All right, the next test, test 2, is applied problems. It requires that the student analyzes and solves math problems. They start out easy, but then the students need to decide what information needs to be used. Sometimes there's too much information given, and the student has to pull out, what do I need to solve this math problem? The bezel is 5 lowest correct, and then the ceiling is 5 highest correct. And like test 1, the test administrator can also indicate the individual's character during the performance. And for this one, just like test 1, it receives correct responses receive a 1, incorrect responses receive a 0. And then, of course, the numbers are all tallied at the end and put in the number correct box. Test 3 is spelling. This is when students must write words that are given orally. The young children, they start out writing lines and tracing letters, and then students have to write upper and lowercase letters. The rest of the questions require that students actually spell words correctly. The basal is 6 lowest correct, and then the ceiling is 6 highest correct. And you can also indicate, as a test administrator, the individual's automatic performance. Now, the correct responses receive a 1, and the incorrect responses receive a 0, just like the other tests. Everything is calculated, all the correct responses are calculated and put into the number correct box. Test number 4 is passage comprehension. It measures the ability to use syntax and semantics cues to identify a missing word in the text. The basal is 6 lowest correct, and then the ceiling is 6 highest correct. And then the test administrator can also indicate the individual's performance as they're taking the test. And then, like the other tests before, correct responses receive a 1, incorrect responses receive a 0, and then the total number is calculated and put in the correct box. What I like when I'm giving these tests is once you really get the rhythm down, it's really easy to score these. You have the test instructions right in front of you. In Blueprint, you have what you as the test administrator is supposed to say, and then it's really easy to calculate the individual's score. Speaking of calculation, test number 5. Test number 5 is calculation. This test measures math achievements. It calculates the ability to solve math problems. And it starts out with students being able to add and subtract single digits, and then it moves to multiplication and division. Basal is 6 for the lowest correct, ceiling is 6 highest. The test administrator can also describe the individual's rate and automacy of the performance. And this one's a little different. When I give this, I have to go ahead and let the students work on, I basically put a sheet in front of them. I've only scored younger kids, so they start out with the addition and subtraction, and I just tell them to, I read the instructions, how they have to go ahead and start and work, and this one I struggle with because a lot of the students I've been giving this to, they really don't know even what the numbers mean when they're stacked on top of each other to add and subtract. But like before, we go ahead and let the student move through, and the correct responses receive a 1, the incorrect responses, or even the responses that are skipped, receive a 0. And like before, the number correct items are recorded in the correct number box. Test number 6, writing samples. So this test measures the student's skill in written response in various questions. This one's a little different. This test, I always have to use the examiner's manual to score this. The basal and the ceiling rules do not apply to this test. The scoring is based on the administration of specific blocks of item. And I'll get into that in just a moment. The test administrator can also describe the quality of the writing sentence in the response to the task commands. And when scoring this, it's important to look at the guidelines provided in the examiner's manual. So, for example, looking at the manual, the examiner's manual, it says that you are not supposed to penalize the examinee for punctuation or capitalization or spelling or uses of errors unless it's indicated in the scoring criteria. So, for example, on items 1 through 6, you receive 1 point if it meets the task requirements. So, for example, if it has the initial letter of the first or last name, like they're asked to write their name, the first or last name is at least one or the other correct, and It also indicates the letter reversals are acceptable.